Hi, welcome to Chamber Chats. I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. And I want, as always, to begin by acknowledging that I live and work in the ancestral territories and land of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations, the Esquimalt and the Songhees. We are proud to work and live beside them, every day. We are doing this, of course, from the podcasting studios at Czech Television, and a big thanks to our sponsors for this podcast, that being Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and C-SPAN Victoria Shipyards. At the Chamber, we say that the place we're in right now is that we are on a recovery runway. We're taxiing down that runway, getting ready to take off. And the people that are making the changes within our economy who have pivoted with these changes are the pivot pilots. We're going to talk with three of them today. Kathy Scott is first. Kathy is the Chief Exploration Officer for Departures Travel, which is on Oak Bay Avenue. Kathy, your sector is one that had an immediate major change when everything stopped and people weren't traveling anymore. What was that like for you in the first couple of weeks?
It was shocking. It was actually it was an interesting period, and I learned a lot about myself. It was a time when, everything dropped out overnight. Basically, I was in total awe of my staff through this time. They didn't complain. They just jumped in. They took care of all of our clients that were stranded overseas. But yeah, it was brutal. We went from one of our best years, well, our absolutely best year ever, to zero revenue overnight.
Yeah. How much work did you have to do to reschedule trips that had already been planned, that people had planned to do in 2020?
Well, interesting. We had to reschedule everything, obviously, so it was a massive amount of work, and it continues. We're now recovering still trips that were planned for 2020 into 2021, and now we're moving them off into 2022. So it's been an inordinate amount of work that I don't think people realize.
Yeah, we're not here to talk about your financials, but when you're doing all of that work to reschedule things and make those changes, you're doing all of that without any business coming in. Yet you have to carry on. That's part of the service, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So you did some things immediately too that were very great for the community. It's a bit of a morale booster for your staff too. But tell me about the stuff you did through the Our Place Society and what you did with them.
Well, we've always been big supporters of our place. I think it's such an important piece of our city. So, obviously, all of a sudden, no revenue, and I was looking at what was happening with some of the local Chinese food restaurants, getting really sort of boycotted at the time with misunderstanding about what was going on there, and so I reached out to 7 other local businesses who all gratefully contributed along with ourselves, and we were able to raise enough money for the first hot meal that our place had received since COVID shut down. So they were very grateful, and they fed somewhere between 300 and 400 people that evening, and it was just a wonderful thing.
Wow, good
Really
for you.
enjoyed
It's
it.
kind of a feel-good thing when we're not feeling too good about anything at that time, right?
It was something positive. We all needed it.
Yeah, and you did a mask fundraiser too.
Still ongoing,
Okay.
actually. Yes, we've raised over 12,000 toward that now, with my mom's little Bernina sewing machine. So she makes all the masks, and it's pretty crazy.
Way to go, Mom. Where do we get the masks? Is it at Departures on Oak Bay
Yeah,
Avenue?
we sell them at Departures on Oak Bay by donation, and that's been really, people have been wonderful at supporting that cause.
Right. So, as we have all been working through this dreaming of travel, trying to imagine travel, another one of the pivots that you made was to create something called the Departures Lounge. Tell me what that is.
Well, that is the place that we say, grab your favorite beverage and join us for a virtual show. And we've done 49 of them, 50 next week. We're
Wow.
really proud of that, actually, and just different things to do with travel. So sometimes it's a travel, one of our suppliers that comes on. Sometimes it's a tour a tour company, and sometimes it's one of the tourism boards, or just us chatting about what's new and exciting in the world of travel. So we've had some international speakers, and we've actually even had people remoting in from places like Egypt and Bolivia. So it's been really kind of fascinating.
So, that's kind of replaced the in person travel, but it gets us thinking about what's going to happen when things do come back, right?
Yeah, an armchair traveling, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tell me about the mystery departures. What's that?
Well, we created that near the beginning as well, because one of the other pieces of my business is niche travel, which is an inbound tour company. So we contract local travel companies to help us service people coming into Victoria. And obviously that business stopped as well. So what we thought was, we've got all these travelers that want to go somewhere international and can't go. And we've got all these suppliers doing amazing things on the ground. So we thought we'd put those together and get local people traveling. And they're basically surprise tours for locals. But that, of course, got shut down as well. But we still have it. So someday when we can get back up and running, the people that did take them had a lot of fun.
So the date of this recording when we're doing this is late March, just so people know, depending on when you might be watching this. What are you sensing? I mean, there is that pent up feeling and demand for travel coming, but are people starting to feel a bit more hope knowing that we're pretty close to the end here? We're getting closer to the light at the end of the tunnel?
For sure. I would say the last 2 weeks has been pretty crazy for us. We're getting quite busy. People are looking at booking things for 2022, and people are hopeful for the end of this year, but frankly, we have no idea. So 2022 is looking really, really strong.
And what locations are people looking to travel to from here?
We're looking at the bucket list type of travel. So we've got things like Antarctica, lots of Europe, of course, Egypt, some South America. It's kind of all over the map. But what we're really seeing as a trend is people are looking and saying, "Hey, I lost 2020, I lost 2021 for the most part. I'm going to do 3 tours in 2022." So they're doing really long duration things. So instead of booking one, they're going somewhere and booking 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. Do you have any
Been
sort of,
great.
do you have any spidey sense about when air traffic is going to return and when will it be back to where it was, or will it ever be back to where it was?
I think it's changed. I think that it's leaned out and changed for sure. My, I mean, I'm no, I'm no visionary on this, but what I think will happen is we'll see late fall or early winter, or late winter, somewhere in there. I don't see anything happening too much before that, but I hope I'm wrong. My connections in the industry are sort of saying they're very, very hopeful for late winter, and 2022 will be crazy.
Well, all the best on it. Thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for being a
Thank
chamber
you.
member, and we appreciate your insight today. Kathy Scott is with Departures Travel. Drop into the location on Oak Bay Avenue and pick up a mask for their fundraising mask campaign. Next will be our publican pivot pilot. So as we continue on here on the chamber chat, talking about people who have pivoted their business, the pivot pilot we're going to talk to next is a publican. It's a lot of P's. Paul Hadfield is his name, and he is the publican at Spinnaker's. Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Nice to see you here. Also, one of our chamber champions, I want to mention. So, Spinnaker's is sort of a collection of things. You have the brew pub. You were the first craft brewer in this region. You have a couple of liquor stores. You have some guest houses. You do some baking. You have the cafe at the airport. You've got a water business. You, though, took this time to sort of pivot some of the fundamental things about being in the hospitality business, especially concerning your staff. So, let's talk about that culture you've created, especially around the payroll thing.
Sure.
So, tell me what you did.
When we went dark a year ago, it was a little bit like shock therapy. It was an opportunity to step back and rethink how we do what we do. And I, for a very long time, have been troubled by some of the ways that hospitality sector has worked traditionally in North America. If we look at the European models, being involved in hospitality is honorable careers. And here it seemed to be not working that way. And we were experiencing high turnovers, burnouts, people coming in for a quick hit while they're on their way to do something else. And I just felt that the onset of the pandemic and having gone through what we went through under the leadership of Ian Tostenson and the BC Restaurant Association and developing guidelines to reopen hospitality in BC gave us an opportunity to reset the bar, to talk about doing some things differently. And I was particularly distressed by disparities within the industry, the differences in terms of remuneration and respect that fall upon the front of house versus the back of house, and a lack of consideration for all of the work that is done in order to set the table, essentially, so that a front of house worker can walk in and take orders, and at the end of the day, walk with a substantial amount of cash. So I decided that this was a great opportunity to become a living wage employer. And rather than push back against what a lot of people in hospitality were doing against the proposed increase, or in fact did happen, increase in minimum wages to about $13.65 an hour, we set the bar at $20. And we just went to people and said, living wage in BC is 1935 right now. Let's call it 20, and we want you to work full time. We want this to be something that you commit to. We want to have less people who are more committed, who function as a team, and we want to get rid of the disparities between different parts of our businesses. We want everybody to feel equally valued and equally compensated for what we do. And what it means at the end of the day is that if somebody chooses hospitality as a career, they can come in and work under these conditions, and they can take home a wage, which is ultimately augmented by the gratuities, which we're all grateful for. But we have the ability for, as defined by Living Wage Canada, that a couple can come and earn a living and raise their kids and buy a place to live and have some money left over to buy discretionary things that they want to do. And we lost a few people in the process. Some people took a hit. But for the most part, everybody that we had come back has come with us. And it's been a fascinating journey. It's been interesting to watch the coalescing of teamwork and camaraderie, and people, I think, having better understandings of what each other do, and consequently more readily available to jump in and say, "Hey, can I give you a hand?" And it's from my perspective, it's been a really joyful experience to watch.
Well, the culture you've built there is one that's inclusive, first of all. And you talked about the tips and the gratuities. What you're doing is splitting that between everyone, right? So it used to
Yeah.
be that the server who was working the night shift serving dinner and alcohol got the most tips, but that's just shared among everybody because they're all part of the team, right? So
Yes.
you've built a culture that I have to think is creating a pretty strong sense of loyalty among your employees, which is what you want, right? You want that continuity of employees.
You know what? I guess one of my earliest recognition or remembrances of this place was back in 1984 when we opened, and it was a patron who was the ultimate Norm from Cheers. And he was a used car salesman in Victoria. He'd had a little restaurant in London, Ontario. And he had no compunction about coming up to me and sticking out his finger and poking me in the chest and telling me what I needed to do. And I respected him a lot, and I learned a lot from him, in terms of both what my job was and the need to develop that kind of a culture where we have these interactions between our staff and our patrons, and everybody's here because it's a great thing to do. It's fun, and it enables us on a broader scale to differentiate ourselves in the market even further, and to build upon those relationships that we have with the farmers and the producers and the growers, suppliers that are part of our landscape. And so we are able on a continuing basis to continue to carve out our own space. And absolutely, we are our own competition, and we have I think, our own path and our own values that we're happily together following.
Yeah. Well,
It's
you've
it's
been
cool.
you've been a leader in the hospitality sector for a long time, so that's an
Well, I had
interesting
a
and
huge advantage in that I didn't come from the hospitality
oh,
sector.
there you
So,
go. Yeah.
I never understood the hierarchies. I never
Yeah.
really understood why it was the way it was. And as an architect, I was taught to question and challenge everything.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it works. In some ways, I'm sure the team shakes their head at me. What's he going to do next?
Well, that's it. We're all waiting to see what you do next. Actually, in the middle of this, you also started a new product line, which we'll talk about in another chamber chat at some point. But you can check it out online at Spinnaker's too. There's a carbonated water product that you've brought out, so good for you on doing that. Paul Hadfield is the publican at Spinnaker's. He is a pivot pilot. He's a chamber champion, and he's a real leader in his sector. So, Paul, thanks very much for being with us here today.
Thank you.
The next pivot pilot we're going to talk about is someone who would be reliant on people walking into their store off the street, which hasn't been happening. As we move along through our chamber chat, talking to one of our pivot pilots, a consignment store in Vic West on Craigflower Road is called Sailor Jack, and Marnie Hart is the proprietor of that location. Marnie, hi.
Hello.
Why Sailor Jack? Tell me about the name, first of all.
That was the original owner's son was named Jack.
Oh, okay.
And so that was 17 years ago.
Wow. So you have this store where people would walk in and browse and look around and pick things up and look at them and try them on. Done. Can't do any of that anymore.
Yes.
So when this started, the first couple of weeks, what's going through your mind and what did you do?
It was shocking. Everybody calls it a pivot, but it was more like a mad scramble to, lots of sleepless nights and trying to figure out how we were going to keep our customers engaged. We had a website, but we quickly had to shift to Shopify and start getting things online. I was very lucky. I was able to keep my staff on board with that, helping them. They were bringing things online, and we did half-hour private shopping appointments because moms were still having babies and kids were still growing, and we were getting all these messages, I'm coming out of the hospital and I need all of these things. So we would book half-hour appointments. We would have one employee in, and they would be able to come, and they were booked for weeks. So it was amazing.
We did a session a while ago with some folks from retail, and Jeffrey from Barclays Jewelers in Oak Bay had mentioned that this idea of making appointments to come in and shop is actually pretty convenient, right? Because when you do that, you're going to arrive and walk in the door. You're not going to have to line up outside in the rain or in whatever it might be going on. So is that something that's going to stay for you, do you think, past this?
I don't think so at this point. We do, we also had to keep our consignment cycle moving. So we had to keep our customers, our consigners being able to drop off. So we did an outside drop off with a doorbell. They could ring, drop off. And so we were able to keep that cycle moving, which is important for everyone, especially our charities that we donate to in the end. So yeah, we had to keep everything moving.
Yeah, and you've actually ramped up your philanthropy and the giving and the things you do with community organizations. So tell me about that and why you did it now.
I think, well, it's more important than ever now. The need is so great, and there's our consigners are so generous. Most of them are dropping off with the idea that they're donating anything that isn't sold or anything we don't take. So we take the extra time to make sure that these individual charities get the right items that they are going to use. It takes us a little bit longer, but in the end, they're so grateful for our donations.
Yeah, what are the organizations you work with mostly?
We work with the Cridge program, with all the programs at the Cridge, the Compassionate Resource Warehouse. We work with local schools and any emergencies as well, like even apartment fires, that sort of thing. Everyone's. I think we've been around for so long that they know that if they need something, they just give us a call.
Yeah, of course, consignment aligns with people who may have limited capacity, right? Who may have limited means.
Yes.
I have to think that coming through this circumstance, that demand of your service will grow with people who have had some displacement from their jobs. Are you seeing that for sure?
Definitely, for sure. Yes. Yeah. More and more families are struggling. And more families that wouldn't have thought of shopping consignment are thinking about it now, and happily, pleasantly surprised. So, yeah.
You mentioned baby items, of course. If you're having a young family, that's always great to save some money. What other kinds of things are most popular in your store?
Well, we carry everything from babies, kids, all the way up until size 16. We have a women's section and maternity. So maternity is probably our most popular at this point right now. And then, of course, toys and things for the little ones as well. Fun.
What have you learned through this pandemic?
I have learned that your employees are your strongest, just so important. And I've learned that they have stepped up for me in ways that I can't even explain. And again, I think just perseverance and just making sure that that you keep your customers engaged. And I use social media a lot throughout this to make sure that everyone knew that we were still there and we still were accepting and our cycle was still moving. I think without social media, it would have been very difficult.
I want to read a testimonial actually from one of your clients. And I quote this: "I rushed in close to closing last week, needing to find suits for both my kids before a special event. Not only did they, as in Sailor Jack, put the suits behind the counter for me until I could get there, but they also helped me pick the right suit for each kid without seeing them, and then gifted me a couple of superhero capes and masks for our special superhero event. I was stressed and overwhelmed walking into Sailor Jack's, but walked out feeling rejuvenated, cared for, and thrilled about how a last-minute formal wear nightmare turned into a sweet moment of connection." That's very inspiring.
Oh, thank you. That's my, and again, my staff, they're amazing.
There is a great culture of caring, I think, that came out of this whole thing. And as moving forward, people like you are leading the way. So that's why you are a pivot pilot. And thank you so much for being here and being a member of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. Marnie Hart is with Sailor Jack, which is a consignment store on Craigflower Road in Vic West. Thanks also to Kathy Scott from Departures Travel and to Paul Hadfield from Spinnakers for being with us here today. We'll get further stories from all of them as we move further along down the Recovery Runway as we get ready to take off with other pivot pilots in these broadcasts yet to come. So thanks once again to the folks here at Czech Television for hosting us in the podcasting studio. A shout out again to our sponsors for this vodcast, who are, by vodcast I mean video podcast, to Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and to C-SPAN Victoria Shipyards. And if you would like to do something for your business or organization and do one of these podcasts, please reach out to the folks at Czech Television. And all of these chamber chats are posted on the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce website, as well as on the Czech TV website. I'm Bruce Williams. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later for another Chamber Chat.
For more episodes of Chamber Chats, go to czechnews.ca/podcasts.